Yeah, I don't really have any real clever intros for this one because, well, it's a Marvel movie. What's there to really say? I mean, the only mildly fascinating behind-the-scenes tidbit I know about is that the villain's played by the Ninth Doctor, and that's it. The first thing that I can say about this film is that it's got the usual trappings that we've come to expect from Marvel Studios over the years. Equal parts action and comedy, as well as frequent allusions to past and future events in the Marvel Universe, and having some good character bits here and there. So really, the fanboys will no doubt be satisfied. However, there were some aspects of the film that I kinda had a problem with while I was watching. I know some fanboys will get all up in arms and think, oh, this film's the greatest thing ever, but then again, I noticed these problems probably because I've been doing this job for so long. Firstly, I understand that Loki, particularly Tom Hiddleston's portrayal of Loki, is a popular character. But really, it felt like there were a few scenes too many that were just kind of added fan service. Because I understand, like, yeah, Loki is a sympathetic villain, but he's good as exactly that, a villain. And so really, although it's not as bad as I've seen in other films that have tried to do fan service, it just, you can tell that that's why some of the scenes in the film were there, was just more Loki! The second problem I had mostly also had to do with scenes that I felt probably should have either been shortened or cut, and that was with scenes where we focused on some of the side characters bumbling around on Earth while Sally is on Asgard. And although some of the stuff was kind of funny, I mean, it was a pretty funny Stan Lee cameo, I'll admit, but just seeing the antics of these side characters, I don't know, it just felt more formulaic and just really broke up the flow. That and really, some of the characters just kind of got on my nerves after a while. I mean, it's not quite clear why the professor had his nervous breakdown. Don't worry, that's not a spoiler, that happens at the very beginning of the film. And so, I guess maybe it was the events of the Avengers, but it's just, Basically, scenes with like the side characters after Sally has already gone to Asgard, they felt kind of formulaic and stupid and just got on my nerves after a while. I mean, the first few times they were kind of funny, but it was just kind of a case of the film trying to say, hey, see, they're still in the movie, right? And so, yeah, that was another problem that I had with the film. And now the third thing that I also had a problem with is some of the acting in a few places. While the main people did a good job, as well as having some of the side characters do a good job, I don't know, it just felt like Anthony Hopkins was kind of phoning it in here, because this was definitely not one of his best performances. And again, I've seen films that he's been in where he's not that good, but just here you can tell that it didn't really feel as natural. Of course, then again, you could say that his performance wasn't as natural in the previous film, but that at least had more of a Shakespearean quality to it, whereas here it felt like Anthony Hopkins was kind of phoning it in this film. That's what it felt like to me. Nitpicks aside, I still enjoyed this film. It's a Marvel movie through and through, so if you go in expecting that, you'll walk away satisfied. And comparatively, I felt that this film was actually better than the original Thor film, mostly when it came to the terms of the character growth that we saw our main character Thor go through. In this film, it actually feels more natural. We actually see more of an arc, whereas with the previous film, the arc felt kind of rushed. We never really saw an arc. It was more like a switch. It was like at the beginning he was kind of reckless and like, hey, I'm gonna start a war with Jotunheim. But then at the end of the film, basically there was no real arc, no real transition to him kind of being wiser by the end of the film. And that the whole inscription on the hammer, when you really think about it, had no point in the previous film. Especially after having read some of the comics, especially regarding the original origin of the character of Thor in the comics. So personally, I felt that at least Thor the Dark World had some better character arcs in this film than it did in the previous Thor movie. All that said, Thor the Dark World gets a 4 out of 5. So that's it for this episode of Romney's Reviews. Tune in next week for my review of The Book Thief. Yes, I know it came out this week, but really look at the stuff that's slated to come out next week on IMDb. Just really look at it. And I know a lot of people, oh, why don't you take a look at Nebraska? Well, limited. That's all I can say. If you want a review of Nebraska, you'll have to wait until my buddy Griffin gets his review up on the Utah Chronicles website. So, yeah, next week is The Book Thief. See ya then.